More CIA-trained intel operative, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, and the best-selling author who shadowed a black ops team in Afghanistan, Brad Thor. Good to see you both. So, Colonel Shaffer, let me start with you.
Yes.
Is there anything that, any of the measures that are being considered to tighten airport security that would have stopped this guy?
This is a tough one. Anytime you have someone who has essentially a legally checked weapon who they take out in the baggage claim area, it's tough to do. I think we have to look, though, Megan, how you would be able to spot and maybe prevent this from happening by the fact that maybe there should be a procedure for stopping this. I mean, you have to understand, as Trace was just talking about, there's crowds in a lot of places, in airports, in train stations, public facilities. I just did a red team walkthrough for a local major landmark that has a lot of people every day. So you've got to actually examine every vector. This is a potential vector. This has never been tried before, but that's why you create red teams. You actually have red teams to actually go through and think, if I were a bad guy, how would I do this? And I did that very thing as a bad guy for this one local big building. So,
but I mean, with all due respect on that, you know, Brad, I'll give this one to you. This is a free and open society, and you know, even if you banned guns from going through, you know, the checked baggage, somebody would come in off the sidewalk, as we just detailed in that Trace report. And you tell me whether we want to believe that there's some way of preventing in this society a madman from getting us, but the truth is, it's not really possible.
No place, Megan, is ever going to be 100% safe. But what Tony was talking about with doing the red teaming, that's a human factor, okay? So you're bringing human beings in to say, to role play, and what would I do as a bad guy? The Israelis do this better than anybody else. And Jay Johnson may be pushing for more uniform officers, which I think is great, because I've stood around LaGuardia and O'Hare and not seen one the entire time of checking in or getting my bags out. But we need to start being able to walk up, profile people, ask them questions, and there need to be several times that passengers or people picking people up actually interface with security personnel and are asked questions. And Trace said earlier, this guy checked, and maybe I heard it wrong, but it sounded like the only thing this guy checked was his case with his gun in it. That should have set off a whole bunch of red flags. That guy should have never been allowed to get onto that airplane in Alaska without a whole hell of a lot of secondary screening and answering some questions. I don't want to take his gun away if he's an average everyday citizen, but that's weird. All the way to Florida with just a gun?
Well, and here's the other question, Tony, Colonel. Why did the guy have the gun in the first place if in November he walked into an FBI office and said, I'm hearing voices telling me to go watch ISIS videos? And he'd been hospitalized 5 years earlier for mental health issues. So it's like, you got the guy who's got the mental health history. He goes into the FBI office a couple months earlier. He travels with only the gun checked. You know, I'm not saying you could have predicted it, but there were a couple of red flags here.
No, as you and Peter King were talking about, this guy was on the radar, and, you know, he was susceptible to suggestion. And I think he followed through with suggestion. And I'm sure ISIS didn't know about it, but this kid took it on and did it. And your point is well taken. This guy was had multiple intakes for mental issues, and plus he was an Army or military reservist. I'm not sure which service.
National Guard.
Means the National Guard should have been tracking this kid, and if there was issues, and clearly there was a pattern, there should have been something. And as Brad said, you know, hey, the kid's traveling with a weapon, maybe there should have been a way of linking that together. And look, I am not for Big Brother. I am not for tracking people randomly.
Liberties.
But there's an issue here when you do have multiple events, not just one, multiple, and the kid's traveling with an unusual pattern with just a weapon. Those two things should have come together at some point. And as Brad said too, just engage him, just talk to him. Somebody should have walked up and said something, and 9 times out of 10 there will be some sort of alerting behavior that says something's not right here.
But it's resources, Brad, right? It costs money to have all these people like they have in Israel.
And I'm brokenhearted because I know this is going to lead back to the VA probably in Alaska, and then people are going to say they didn't give him the care. It's going to be a tough thing for them. But listen, he's a 26-year-old, prime for a psychotic break, prime. And here's the thing. I agree with you. ISIS may not have directed him to do this, but guess what? ISIS just saw something that works. So it is going to be open season on travelers, and I hate that. But this now shows this kind of thing works, and if we don't get our acts together quick, we're going to see it happen again and again and again.
So
here.
given that, because there's always the danger of copycats when something like this happens, what are people supposed to do? You got to go through the system as it's currently established. You have to stand in a long line for security. You have to stand in a line to get your bag, especially let's say you're going away for 2 weeks. You got a family of 5. You're not going to be able to carry on all your luggage.
Well, Megan, look, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
So I was just going to say real quick, you travel at the most off-peak hours you can. You get a known traveler number, so you zip through. You show up with your own boarding pass already printed out, and you do carry-on. You move through that unsecure area as fast as you can, and you only travel that way if you absolutely have to.
And I went through Heathrow recently, and Megan, they actually have a system of channelization, so you don't have people standing in big areas. And if something goes off, God forbid, it's limited to a single area. And as Brad said, your best defender is yourself. Pick up and do what you can to keep your eyes looking around. And look, your instincts, if you have that little spidey sense in the back of your neck with your little hair, that should be telling you to do something.
Well, this is also, you know, the airports are gun-free zones, so you're there to defend yourself. But nobody had a weapon there. They're considering changing that in a bill that's under consideration now in the Florida legislature. But most of the people he was going up to, they were shot in the head. A few of them, according to that eyewitness, they were elderly. You know, these weren't people who were in any position to defend them. I got to leave it at that, Tony. My apologies.
I'm a former federal officer. We should all be armed all the time, just because we're capable.
It's great to see you guys. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Megan.